Hello and welcome to this edition of Race to Power. I'm Ananya Datta and I'm here to talk about politics. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. The Britons head to polls today in an election that could change the course of politics in the country. We get you ground updates from London. In the United States, as pressure grows from within and outside, Joe Biden has vowed to stay in the race to the end, as he says. The question is, can he win? United Kingdom went to polls today about at 6 in the morning. Britons thronged to the 40,000 polling stations set up across the country. It is being touted as an election that could change the course of UK politics. The Prime Minister, along with her businesswoman wife Akshata Murthy, voted early, and they were seen in North Allerton, that Sunak represents in the Parliament. Labour leader Keir Starmer also arrived with his wife at the polling station in London. 61-year-old former human rights lawyer could become the Prime Minister of UK if Labour wins. Now, this is how the outgoing Parliament looks like. The Conservatives have the highest number of seats at 345, followed by the Labour with 206 seats and the Scottish National Party with 43 seats. The UK is divided into 650 constituencies. In a general election, voters in each constituency choose a member of the Parliament, also known as MP, to represent them in the House of Commons. Each person has one vote. Under a system called first past the post, the candidate with the most votes become the MP for that area. And the party with the most MPs typically forms the next government, and its leader usually becomes the Prime Minister. This general election uses new constituency boundaries redrawn to reflect population changes and to even out voter numbers. For the very first time, the voters in England, Scotland and Wales have to show their valid photo ID to vote in person. The Prime Minister called for early elections in May, and UK has lived under the Conservatives for about 14 years, often turbulent ones. Polling stations will close at 10 p.m. local time, and the voters can vote as long as they are in by the deadline. Soon after, the counting will begin and we can expect early exit poll numbers.
Now. Just 1 minute, just 1 minute.
You guys are going down, huh?
Now, to get us the latest, we are being joined by Oliver Regan from the ground. Oliver, good to see you. What is the latest you can tell us? It has been a long day for you. What is it that you're hearing?
Yes, of course, I've been here since 7 this morning, which is when the polls opened here in the UK. And what's been a nice, fair day of lots of sunshine, which will be positive, we think, for voter turnout. And of course, as you mentioned, the polls opened this morning at 7 o'clock. They will close at 10 p.m. this evening, and we have 650 constituencies across the UK, and many of them are hosting the voting community centres like this, church halls, village centres and small areas that are transformed into an area where constituents can vote during the day. Now, of course, any party wanting to win the election needs to win 326 MPs to get a majority, and as I say, there's 650 constituencies across the UK. We've seen the leaders of the major parties turning out to their local areas to vote and to cast their ballot, and it is around 45 million Britons who are eligible to vote in this election. We will get some figures on turnout towards the end of the day, and the key thing really in terms of how things happen from here is it's 10 p.m. local time, so it is around 3:30 p.m. local time here, so we have another 6.5 hours to go. There'll be many more people filtering past me once work finishes as well to cast their votes, and then at 10 p.m. the exit poll will be published. by the major broadcasters, and that is a real indication as to who is going to have won this election. The exit poll often is very accurate, and then over the coming hours the votes will be gathered, they will be counted, they will be recounted and ratified, and then through the night, starting around midnight, we will start to get results coming through from across the country. Usually in the northeast of England, up near a city called Newcastle, is where we often expect to get the first results. And then around where I am, we're expecting results to come through around 6 a.m. in the morning. So I will be back here bright and early tomorrow to bring you the latest on what has happened on General Election Day.
All right, Oliver, some good wind and a warm day is good news for the UK voters, of course. Hopefully that will turn to be a good news for voter turnout as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Oliver, and getting us all those updates. Shifting focus to US polls now, President Joe Biden faces what may be the most critical 24 hours of his career. He has been battling hard to save his 54-year political career. With the clock ticking, the public holiday has allowed him to regroup his political strategy. Now, Biden has put all speculations to rest. He vows to stay in the presidential race despite his shaky performance in the first debate. Biden has reassured top Democrats that he is fit for re-election. This after a New York Times report says that the president is weighing in on his decision to continue. Presidential polls are just 4 months away and Biden has a lot of image cleaning up to do. He has an interview scheduled tomorrow with ABC News, following which Biden will host campaign events in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. The White House has been working day in and day out to shore up support for the 81-year-old. Earlier in the day, Biden met with Democratic governors. After a closed-door meeting, the governors pledged their support to Biden's re-election bid.
Always had our backs, we're going to have his back as well, because the results that we've been able to see under this administration have been undeniable in all of our individual states. But the thing that makes us most optimistic and most hopeful is not necessarily that we're afraid of an alternative, but also is that we're hopeful for the future.
I'm here to tell you today, President Joe Biden is in it to win it. And all of us said we pledged our support to him because the stakes could not be higher.
A section of Democrats are reportedly ready to back Vice President Kamala Harris if Biden steps aside. According to reports, House Democrats Jim Clyburn has said that he will support Kamala Harris as the presidential candidate if Biden were to depart. And so do a handful of other governors who are potential rivals to Biden. Reports suggest Harris is the likely successor if pressure for Biden to step aside increases. And amid this speculation, Harris herself has said that she is proud to be Joe Biden's running mate.
Joe Biden is our nominee. We beat Trump once and we're going to beat him again. Period. I am proud to be Joe Biden's running mate. Thank you.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump is ceding the spotlight to Biden. He has claimed that Biden is quitting. A leaked video clip showing Trump on the golf course has surfaced on social media. And in the video, Trump can be heard calling Kamala Harris, quote-unquote, pathetic.
He's got all broken down pile of yeah, it's a bad guy. He just quit, you know. He's quitting the race. Is that right? Yep, I got him out of the race. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic. It's so amazing. It's just I just can't imagine. But can you imagine that guy with dealing with Putin and the president of China, who's a fierce person? He's a fierce man.
As Biden's replacement talks rebuild, Trump's Republican allies have launched a political campaign in a bid to discredit her. In a flurry of statements, Trump's allies have called Kamala Harris Biden's enabler-in-chief. The seemingly coordinated escalation is seen as a move to weaken Harris even if she emerges as the nominee. And to get us more perspective, we are being joined by Peter Kuznick, Professor of History at American University. He's joining us live from Massachusetts, pardon me. All right. Professor Kuznick, thank you so much for joining us here on WION. Sorry for my slip of tongue. You're joining us from Massachusetts, of course. So we are here sitting 4 months ahead of the presidential election in the United States. And it seems like the U.S. President Joe Biden has vowed to not step down. And if I could quickly quote him, he says, "No one's pushing me out. I'm not leaving. I'm in this race to the end and we are going to win." Unfortunately, we're not seeing the same kind of optimism from other Democrats as well as some voters. How are you assessing it?
I agree with those who think that it is absolutely essential for Biden to step down. This election is just too important to take a chance on an 81-year-old who is not seen by the public as being competent or in complete control. I have a lot of other issues with Biden in terms of his foreign policy, his militarism, his blanket unquestioning support for Israel, sending more arms to Israel, his approach to Ukraine, where he's not put any pressure on Zelensky to negotiate. There are a lot of issues, but we're facing Donald Trump, and Donald Trump clearly represents a threat to American democracy. Donald Trump will tear apart the U.S. Constitution. So we're not at a time in the United States where we could take a chance on a candidate like Biden, who is seen by the overwhelming majority of Americans to be unfit for the presidency. Some of them will vote for Biden anyway because they're so opposed to Trump, but this won't be a pro-Biden vote at all. It would be an anti-Trump vote, but another candidate would be much, much stronger, somebody younger, more vigorous, mentally sharper, and more progressive.
Right.
Is what we need right now. And there are some Democrats who fit that bill.
Right. Professor Guznik, here in WION, we have been also tracking the unconventional voters to say because some of the voters are not exactly pro-Trump and pro-Biden. So some of them are actually anti-Trump. And they were actually keenly looking forward to this kind of a debate. So what do you think? Where do these anti-Trump voters go if Biden stays on as the Democratic nominee?
I think the anti-Trump voters would still vote for Biden, even in his compromised state. The problem is that you've got those in-between voters, the ones who are undecided, and they see Biden's performance, and that's pretty frightening to them. Also, younger voters. I know my students and people of that generation, people under 30, are very questioning of Biden. They're strongly opposed to his continuing to arm Israel against the Palestinians. It's a very, very big issue to the younger generation. And they're already felt that Biden was much too old to run again. So what's happening is the narrative now, after Biden's debate performance, his pathetic debate performance, reinforced all the doubts and concerns that American voters already had before that. Biden was trailing narrowly in the polls before the debate. Now that lead has widened, especially in the swing states, the ones that are crucial. So I think if Biden remains on the ticket, Democrats' chances of winning are very, very slim. But if Biden is replaced by a younger, more vigorous person, a Gretchen Whitmer or a Gavin Newsom or Wes Moore, then the Democrats have a much better chance of winning in November.
All right, Professor Guznik, thank you so much for joining us here on WION and getting us your insights.
Thank you.
Now, Iran is poised to hold its runoff elections on Friday, that's the 5th of July, and reformist Dr. Masoud Pezeshkian and ultra-conservative Saeed Jalili are in the fray for Tehran's top job. The runoff election follows last Friday's polls where only about 40% of voters turned up to cast their ballots. As a result, none of the four candidates were able to garner the 50% votes needed to win, sending the election into a runoff round. The reformist candidate, Pezeshkian, who is a former health minister, has promised that he would engage with the West in nuclear negotiations to lift the tough economic sanctions that are plaguing Iran's economy. On the other hand, the ultra-hardliner Saeed Jalili, a former nuclear negotiator, has portrayed a much tougher position on negotiations. He has also underlined his plans to defeat sanctions and strengthen economic ties with other countries. Iran's spluttering economy, sanctions led by the United States and women's rights remain major issues in this election. Of the 5 conservative and hardline candidates allowed to run in the election, 3 have backed Jalili and 1 has endorsed Pezeshkian so far. On July 3rd, both the candidates held their final rallies to woo the voters before Friday's runoff polls.
The enemy itself admits that today, in the region, the power of the Islamic Republic is the most influential power, which means that if 100 rockets are fired at the Zionist regime, it does not dare to respond or do anything else.
People must be allowed to express themselves, and we must allow that. I have said this repeatedly, that the nation is not led with one certain person, group or faction. The nation will be led with all the Iranians.
Earlier, during a more than 2-hour debate on public TV, both candidates accused each other of having no plan or experience ahead of Friday's runoff polls. Meanwhile, over 60% of voters abstained from the June 28th ballot. It is a historic low turnout, which is being seen as a vote of no confidence in the Islamic Republic. Let's shift our focus to Indian politics now. A day after the Bharatiya Janata Party submitted a notice against Leader of Opposition Rahul Gandhi in the Lok Sabha over alleged inaccuracies in his speech, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju has said that any member trying to mislead the House will not get away easily. Rijiju referred to a notice submitted in Lok Sabha by BJP member Basuri Swaraj. BJP has urged the Speaker to take cognizance of certain inaccuracies in Gandhi's speech on the motion of thanks on the President's address. Rijiju has said that Rahul Gandhi will have to either substantiate his claims or apologize to the House. The minister has accused the Congress MP of making untruthful claims about the Agniveer scheme and compensations paid to locals in Ayodhya. Remember, Rahul Gandhi's remarks were expunged on Tuesday. Now our correspondent Siddhant Sibul has more on this from New Delhi.
The government has hinted that it might ask Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla to use privilege motion against the leader of the opposition, Rahul Gandhi. Now, we know that the first session of the 18th Lok Sabha was quite tumultuous with, of course, the opposition, especially leader of the opposition, Rahul Gandhi, cornering the government on various issues from Manipur to NEET examination. But we also saw how ruckus being made during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech as well by the opposition. But all in all, it looks like a great divide between opposition and the government. And as the focus shifts to the upcoming session, the budget session of the Indian Parliament, it looks like the opposition will continue to corner the government on various issues, even as government tries to give its own focus on development priorities. This, of course, is the third consecutive term for the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and of course he has been highlighting, as has been in his parliament speeches as well, as to how the focus is on development in the Amrit Kal. With video journalist Neeraj Patel, Siddhant Sibal for WION in New Delhi.
Shifting focus to neighbouring Nepal now, despite facing the prospect of a loss, Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal of the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist Centre, has opted to go for a vote of confidence in Parliament instead of stepping down. This comes after the Nepali Congress and the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist, which are the two largest parties in the House of Representatives, signed an agreement to form a new coalition government in the Himalayan nation. Ministers from CP and UML resigned en masse from the government, and they tendered the resignation to Nepalese Prime Minister, formally exiting the cabinet and withdrawing their support. Following a series of swift political developments over the last few days, Sher Bahadur Deuba, former Prime Minister and also the President of the Nepali Congress, and KP Sharma Oli, also a former Prime Minister and leader of CPN UML, signed an agreement to form a new coalition government in Kathmandu. According to the deal, Oli and then Deuba will serve as Prime Ministers on a rotational basis during the 3.5-year tenure left of the present government. Following this, the CPN UML asked Dehel to step down from office as per Article 76(2) of the country's constitution. According to this article, the President shall appoint as the Prime Minister a member of the House who can command a majority with the support of 2 or more parties. However, a meeting of office bearers of the CPN Maoist Centre decided that Dehel could not step down and instead go for a vote of confidence in the House of Representatives. Though Dehel has decided to go for a floor test, the numbers do not add up in his favour at all. Of the 275-member House of Representatives, the Nepali Congress is the largest party with 89 seats. The CPN UML has 78 seats, while the Dehel CPN Maoist Centre is the third largest party with 32 seats. The Rashtriya Swatantra Party and the Janata Samajwadi Party have 20 and 5 seats respectively. Now, correspondent Saloni Murarka gets us more from Kathmandu.
Nepal Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal is now leading a minority government after he lost his biggest ally, CPN UML party, with 78 seats in the parliament. The party withdrew its support extended to Prachanda-led government last night. Despite this, there is no sign of Prime Minister Dahal stepping down from his position and now is expected to address the parliament in a few days on the latest political developments. Well, as per the constitution, Prime Minister Dahal has 30 days to seek a floor test in the parliament and prove his majority. Well, it is unlikely for him to win this floor test given the political equations and all the small parties have extended the support to the new coalition government. The new coalition government that is being formed by the CPN UML party and Nepali Congress. Meanwhile, both these parties have been persisting to Prime Minister Dahal to step down and make the way for the new government formation. Well, now it depends on the president who will now invite the parties who can prove the majority in the parliament and form a government. Saloni Murarka for WION World is One in Kathmandu, Nepal.
And with that, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me and Anya Datta. Goodbye.
Iran heads for a runoff election on Friday. Reformist Pezeshkian and hardliner Jalili battle it out in round 2 after low voter turnout in round 1. Will the runoff be any different?
خب مردم عزیز ما داشتن و این در حالی بود که دانشجویان ما درگیر
Ahead of the 5th of July, presidential candidates clash over foreign policy and sanctions in a debate. Khamenei loyalist Jalili promises to adhere to the hardline ideals of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, while the reformist camp is hopeful of change.
This week on the West